Living from our heart, living from our core, living from our power, we all get more. We are powerful.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Transformation Summit. I am Sue Erda. I'm your host for this event, and I'm the publisher here at Powerful You Publishing. And I'm so grateful and happy to bring to you these 20 authors who are the co-authors of the book, The Art and Truth of Transformation for Women. And they all got together, we gathered them together so that they could share their stories of transformation to help you, when you read them, to have more ease along your own journey of transformation in your own life. So I get the privilege to introduce them to you through these interviews. Today, I'm happy to be able to talk with Renee Dineen. She is one of our authors. I love the title for her interview today, Undo the Doing, which, gosh, I have a lot of that to do. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say, Renee. And her subtitle is Why Breaking Our Addiction to Doing is the Secret Ingredient to Authentic Living and Lifelong Success. So that's really good. I bet some of you have some undoing to do too. So I'm going to read a brief introduction of Renee, and then we'll get started talking with her. Renee Dineen is an international thought leader for business, psychology, and well-being. In 2015, she was self-described as a recovering workaholic and doing addict. She left her executive role in biotech to do work that mattered to her without sacrificing other parts of her life. Today, her consulting firm inspires leaders and teams to develop while retaining their authenticity in the face of challenge. Renee has been featured on podcasts, presented on global stages, and published dozens of articles on leadership and personal growth. In 2020, earlier this year, Renee did a TED Talk titled Authentic Inaction, in which she demystifies our culture's obsession with busyness and doing. It reaches over 500,000 views so far. Renee lives in California with her husband and 2 children. And Renee, I am so happy to be here with you today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Also super excited to be here.
Good, me too. And it's true. I really do love your title, Undoing the Doing. It's like the unlearning. I talk about unlearning things all the time. So I'm really interested to hear about this. To get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about your personal journey and about the work you do, how you became addicted to doing, and how that, undoing came about?
Oh, goodness. Well, I should start at the beginning because it was really well modeled for me to just, this real reward and intrinsic satisfaction that you get from doing, from moving, from achieving, from accomplishing, from evaluating, from approving, right? That all of those attributes that I'd say fall under that doing umbrella. And so it was well modeled for me with my parents. And I think also part of my nature, kind of who I am is someone who is about momentum and moving forward. So I think I was susceptible. And then I ended up in graduate school in the Bay Area in the 90s, in the heart of the Silicon Valley. And I studied organizational psychology and started to work in learning and organizational development in a time when, just this idea of working and doing and achieving and thriving, in the heart of the Silicon Valley. So I was susceptible. It was well modeled. I fell into an area in the country and in the world where I was surrounded by doing addicts, and I was rewarded well. And, I used to be like, oh, I'm proud of, being a doer. Look at all that I accomplished and look at the life I get to live. And I think, there was a very sort of artificial reflection on the pros and cons of being that kind of person. And then I was into my working life about 20 years when I realized, oh my goodness, I'm not just a doer, I'm actually addicted to it. And it was, my health was failing. I developed a tremor and a stutter. It was stress related, thankfully, that my doctor thought I might have MS. And so that was a wake up call. And then I just started to notice, being a working mom with young kids, I just wasn't as present as I wanted to be. I wasn't as patient. I started to really notice the detriment of it, of a lifelong doing life. And so I decided to make a change. And about 5 years ago, I did decide to leave my corporate life. I'd worked in high tech and biotech and had moved myself up and been an expat overseas for 5 years. And I decided that I couldn't wrestle this beast. I personally couldn't without leaving. And I also had dreams of leaving. And so I listened to that voice and I left. And I thought at first, wow, this would be so easy, right? Like my calendar is clear and I'm not in the, the kind of the context that I was in. And I realized, oh, shoot, there you go, there you are. So it's been a journey, and I've had to do a lot of deep work, and I have to stay in my work. And so I decided part of my work was to share my story. And so that's, you mentioned the TEDx talk is about naming doing as an addiction, and laying it out in terms of its pros and cons. And so hopefully that reaches audiences and listeners who resonate with that message and are also potentially suffering from it and feel inspired to shift that in their own life as well.
Yeah, it definitely resonates with me. I love the idea of inaction, considering that I'm one of these doers too. Let's talk a little bit more specifically about this. What is a doing addict, and why should everybody out there be listening to this, and why it might be important to them?
Yeah. I've had different names for it, but I'm landing on doing addict. Action junkie is another version, right? It's just that quick hit, like a drug, that you get when you do something that, kicks up your endorphin, or even, puts you in fight and flight, response. And over time, while we need some stress, right? And there's definitely, we don't want to just be stagnant, because change doesn't happen in that space either. But I think this idea that recognizing it, as a high that you chase, and for me, it was never enough. And therefore I was never enough. So, being a doer is one thing, but being a doing addict for me has meant, and how I define it really is where I'm not in control of it anymore. My doing life had me versus me having it. And that looked like raising my hand for every new exciting project. It looked like accepting every social invitation. It looked like, modeling it and pushing the doing life onto my children, who are different than me and who aren't wired, and likely maybe at least my son, not as susceptible. But, it is where I would just say, to summarize the difference, being a doer, someone who likes to make things happen, is great, but at the expense of your own health and well-being, and at the expense of being choiceful and really being able to choose and say no when you really want to say no, that's when it becomes an addiction.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great distinction, because I think that we do like to be busy, in the sense that, hey, I'm doing something productive, I'm moving forward, like you said before. So that's very interesting, because I can see the pros and the cons of it, in my own life, and as you're explaining it.
Well, in that, I really had to shed an identity,
Yeah.
part of my identity, which was, not only am I a doer, but I'm the one who will do it all. I mean, anyway, there will be people listening. That creates suffering in relationships, false expectations, resentment. I mean, all of it, right? When it starts to snowball, you really can see it for what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about this. I know I've heard you say this before. It's like, you say that doing nothing can manifest everything. Now that's like, my mind goes, what? So
Right.
Tell me a little
Mine
bit about that. Well, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, how doing nothing can manifest everything. Really that part of my message is about aligning who we are with what we do. And when we're in that pattern, that vicious cycle, that habitual pattern, really, right, way of saying yes even when we mean no, we start to separate the link between who we are and what we do. And so what it requires, and my term is called authentic inaction, which is completely non-intuitive, and inaction being one word, not inaction, right? But it's being willing it's like to move from taking a bunch of inauthentic action to taking authentic action. What I have found, there's a step in between, which is to sit still, be quiet, listen, receive, reflect, choose. And so that doing nothing could be 5 seconds, it could be 5 days, it could be 5 years. It could be seconds when, like, do I really want to go do that Friday night? I really don't. I want to hang out and watch a movie with my kids, right? It could be 5 days. Oh gosh, do I want to take on that project or not? It's Thursday. I need to let them know by Monday I'm going to sit on this, right? Or 5 years, do I want to leave this relationship? Do I want to leave this job? Sometimes those have a much longer kind of, path. And so this idea, though, that there is some need for the pause, for the stopping, to really get clear, and then to manifest what it is you're really, really up to. That's the That's the carrot. Yeah. But if we're not out, if we're in our pattern of just doing, then, you know, one, I know I found myself trapped by, gosh, why did I say yes to that? Now I can't do that, which is what I really, really want. Right. So it manifests itself in all sorts of ways, but I think just to summarize what I mean by that is not to sit and wait for life to show up at your doorstep. It's not about procrastination. It's around being willing to insert that practice of pause, reflect, and choose. And in that moment, you are doing nothing but sitting with the question, do I do it or not?
Practice the pause, reflect, and choose. I like that. That's very good. I always say practice the pause, but I like that you've added that pause, reflect, and choose, because it gives me as a doer something to do too, by the way.
Someone did say, isn't that a different form of doing? I said, well, just, you know, I suppose it is, because you're not, right? We're not dead. We're not sleeping, right? We're still present and awake in our life. In fact, maybe more awake than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you work with a lot of clients. Is there something that you would say is a common obstacle or roadblock that come up with these people that are looking to, you know, undo some of the doing that's done to them?
Yeah, I would say, maybe just ironically, I had a client meeting this morning, and what really we identified for her is that over time, she was so disconnected from her own needs and her own desires and her own callings that she, her life became a bit fragmented, but she also lost touch with herself and her worth, you know, and everything that goes along with that. And so, you know, I think what I see commonly with clients, particularly clients who are also doing addicts, is that they lose touch with or completely lose direction in terms of, what am I really up to? You know, who I am, aligning who I am with what I do. And what they've disconnected from oftentimes is what I call their belly center, right? That place where action is taken from our belly center, and that we start to rely too much on our head, which is a lot of you should and you need to and I have to, right? That doesn't live in our belly, that lives here. And so they've lost connection with their belly centering. So getting them in touch with that aspect of their intelligence, you know, that instinct, I find typically sets them up better to break this cycle, right? It's like, let me just listen, let me just sit. And I even say, put your hands on your belly, you know, get out of your head, you know, and pass through your heart for sure, right? Like this is a journey. But for many, it's that they've shut off their instinct, and therefore they're just acting rather than deciding.
So that's what you teach them to do, is that's the first step. You take them from their head down to their belly. So how do you know if you're really listening to your belly instead of, you know, somebody else's belly or voice or whatever, or that voice in your head? How do you know?
I love that question. Well, one thing we also lose touch with is the wisdom of our bodies. And so I tend to work with the three centers. And if there's a spiritual overlay, a fourth center, which is our spiritual center. But with head, heart, and body, I think, you know, typically our head is behind or ahead, right? Like rarely right here. Our heart is either open or closed, right? And so over time, lots of closed, it's harder to open back up. So there might be some work to do there. But the belly center, I find the best way to reconnect is to start to pay attention to what's going on in our bodies when something comes up. You know, I'll say, do your hands sweat? Does your neck get tight? Does your belly get, you know, sick? Do you get sick? Do you get foggy head? So start to take those as cues that tell you, sort of like having a good deck of oracle cards and, you know, someone who's sort of like really helping you narrow in on guidance, right? Like reconnect to that guidance, that source of guidance. And your body is the most held prisoner. It's here. It's like, I have all three. It looks like I'm all here, but really sometimes just our body's here. And so how can we start to tune into that more and take its signals and signs earlier, or for some, like reconnect to it all together. So I start there. So I do some work with the three centers and yeah.
Okay. So, but how do you know to trust yourself? Like, how do you know? Because it takes time, right? Like it's like, is that really what I'm supposed to do? Like, how do you know that it's really you that lives in this body that is telling you to do this?
Yeah. Oh gosh, how do we know anything, I guess, right?
How long does it take? You know, how long does
it take? I mean, well, I guess it also it depends on two things. One, how distant you are from it, you know, how long you've been ignoring it. call it sort of, the volume is down. And also the context you're in, if you're under a lot of stress, an abusive relationship, if you're suffering from other addictions, health ailments, if you're in a dysfunctional company, it's going to be harder too to trust yourself because you're not safe. So I'd say one is just acknowledging, is it safe for me to really decide, And sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. But when we feel safe, we feel clearer, right? We feel more, not just connected to our true voice and our true thoughts, but really, creating that, safe enough to also express those thoughts and to make requests and things like that. So how do you know? Gosh, I know it's like, you just know, yes. And, it takes some work to reconnect to that center and also to just trust the process of that reflection and that reconnection and trust its wisdom. So, in that you have to decide to trust it.
Yeah.
There's no magic bullet, but speaking just from my own journey more than anything.
Yeah, terrific. Renee, you decided to share your story in this book, The Art and Truth of Transformation for Women. And what would you say, why did you decide to do that? Like, what called to you about this project and sharing the story that you did?
Yeah, my writing life has been probably about 5 years ago. I decided that I wanted writing as part of my life, and I remember the first writing workshop I went to, the leader said, okay, so how many people are writers? And I think like one, right? And so he's like, oh, interesting. Okay, how many of you are writing? Of course, we all raised our hand, mostly. And he goes, so what's the difference? What's the difference? And they're like, well, I don't have a book. I don't have this. I don't have it. He goes, you're all writers and you need to embody that if that's an identity that, has meaning for you. So I have invested in my writing life and I have been thinking and knowing I would write a book. And then I think you reached out to me and I looked at who you are and the core mission of Powerful You Publishing. And I was like, it was like, oh, of course, that's what I've been waiting for. So I really want to say like, it was the reason you're in business that attracted me to this. And then, I also, wow, I just have to write a chapter. I can do that, right? Like I can actually do that. A couple thousand words, no problem. I got this. And so realistically for me, the discipline around the writing is the hardest. So this was a goal I could really achieve and an anthology I would be proud to be part of and an organization that, was a match for me and my purpose and mission and values. So it was pretty easy to decide once I asked the right questions.
Yeah, awesome. And we would love to publish your whole book too, because I know you are a writer.
Thank you.
All right, terrific. Well, for the people that are listening to this call, they, the title, Undoing the Doing, what are your final thoughts and words for them? If they're really in this place where they're like on that hamster wheel and they really want to get off and they don't want to keep doing, what do you have to say to them?
Oh gosh, I'm just going to look you in the eye and say this and write this on a card, hang it in your office, put it in your bathroom. Here's the deal. Who you are, what you've done, and what you have is already enough. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to fill in. Again, who you are, what you've done, and what you have is already enough. So you're starting from that. And that is what I wish for you. And when you can take that into your heart, the undoing just starts to happen. Because you get real clear about what you're really up to and you start to align who you are with what you do and you start to give yourself permission to make choices that serve you and you honor your next chapter. I love that metaphor. Like I already have a really good book that's already been written, right? So this is just my next chapter and I'm choosing it. And so I think that you will your doing life will start to unravel and then you'll redo it in the way that serves you best. Yeah.
Beautiful. And of course, when you're serving yourself, you're also serving the world. That's how it works. Right. And that's the beauty of it, really. If you're happy inside, it reflects outside and it just shines on everybody and it's beautiful. So terrific. Thank you, Renee. That's beautiful. I love it. I'm going to do some more of that myself. The undoing. Got to do it. I got to do it. The undoing. All right. So, Renee, I know you have a gift for our listeners. And I know that there are people that would love to be in touch with you, get more of you, sign up for your stuff. So please tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, the gift is just, I created a 4-step guide to taking more authentic inaction in your life. So that practice between going from taking a bunch of inauthentic action to authentic action. And so a way to really start that journey. So that is free for you all. And probably my website is the best place to reach me. And I do one-on-one and group coaching. I design really transformational leadership events. And I'm going to start a mastermind, really cool mastermind coaching group called Undoing the Doing in either winter or spring, depending on what happens in the world. And but reneedineen.com is my website. And from there, you can learn plenty about me and decide if and how I can serve you and be part of your journey or not. But either way, thank you for listening. Thank you for reading. And Sue, seriously, you are a gift in so many ways, but I really feel blessed to have been found by you. And I'm blessed to have said, yes, this is an authentic action that I am dedicated to. And I'm so glad I took. So thank you.
Same here. Thank you so much. I'm so happy for this connection. I'm grateful for you and your words that you shared today, and your story in the book is all a divine connection. So thank you. And listeners, thank you all for being here and listening to Renee and me today. And this has been great. And I hope you'll continue to listen to the summit and buy this book, The Art and Truth of Transformation for Women, on launch day, which is October 20th. The website to go to get this book is transformation-book.com. And when you go there on launch day, we'll guide you to Amazon to buy the book. You come back to our website with your Amazon receipt, sign in to get access to I think we have about 35 gifts right now for you that come along with this book. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. You'll love all of it. So thank you all so much. I wish you a beautiful day of undoing some of the stuff you have planned and doing some really introspection and thinking about the process of undoing. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a beautiful day. Bye for now.